and Ma Makes 3 is the 20th episode of the 3rd season of The Golden Girls. This is directed by Terry Hughes, and as always there will be spoilers from now as I go through the episode and share some thoughts. It's generally a pretty good episode. I didn't actually find the main narrative to be that fascinating, but I imagine there are a lot of people in a similar situation, whether they're the Dorothy or the Blanche, and I think it could actually provide some really great food for thought here and some really great insights. So I may not have found it that fascinating, but I think there's a lot of value, and I will, of course, talk about that as we go through the episode. It starts off with Rose and Sophia in the kitchen. Sophia is upset because her friend has moved away, and basically the whole gang is gone, so it's just her now. And the girls suggest that she actually goes out and meets some people, which seems pretty fair, because if she's upset about basically being the only one left and not really having any friends around her now, that's not going to change until she does something about it. Dorothy then has a date. He's called Raymond, played by James Karen, and Sophia ends up going along with them. It's not a big deal. It's a one-time thing. Of course, she can spend time with them and get her out and about. That's a good thing. Well, it doesn't exactly go according to plan, but I'll talk about that more in a moment. We also have part of the story focusing on Rose and Blanche is running for the fashion show chairman of the Tinkerbells, and I have absolutely no idea who the Tinkerbells are. I don't know if I missed an explanation at some point. I did Google it, and I didn't really get any solid answers. I don't know if we find out later on, but if somebody has any information on that, please feel free to share. And Rose really wants to do this. Dorothy doesn't think that she's fashion show chairman material. And they both make insults at Dorothy's outfit. Really harsh insults, but admittedly they are kind of funny. And then Rose says to Blanche, "Everybody on the committee is female. Who are you going to sleep with?" Implying that the only way Blanche would get it is if she slept with somebody. And that's clearly not going to happen. We also learn that Dorothy is actually getting ready for a date with Raymond, and it's the first time in weeks they'll be going out without Sophia. And they're just heading out of the door, trying to avoid Sophia coming in, basically. And, of course, Sophia catches them on the way out, and Dorothy doesn't know how to say no to her, so she ends up going with them. Dorothy then promises Raymond that they will go away together to the Bahamas. Sophia comes into the room later on and overhears this, and again, Dorothy doesn't know how to tell Sophia that she's not allowed to go with them. And honestly, if I were Dorothy, I feel like I would just say, "No, you're not coming." But at the same time, I don't know. I don't like to hurt people's feelings. But at the same time, I don't want to go on holiday with people I don't want to go on holiday with. So I guess Dorothy's in a bit of a difficult situation. We're then in the kitchen. It's Dorothy and Rose. And then Blanche comes down and said that she had a dream where, and I quote, "I was stranded on a desert island with Tom Selleck, Ted Danson, and Steve Guttenberg." Obviously, 3 men and a baby. Love the mention of Ted Danson. And then they talk about how Dorothy really needs to tell Sophia, tell her how she feels, tell her that she really needs alone time with Raymond. And Rose tries to tell a story about Sonia Klingenhofer. And I loved Dorothy's approach. Dorothy just claimed to know Sonia Klingenhofer and that she was somebody from St. Olaf, and that Rose didn't need to tell the story because Dorothy knew her. It didn't work. Rose pointed out Sonia Klingenhofer isn't a woman, and Dorothy says, and I love this, this was beautifully executed, very funny. Dorothy says, "I know, she's a cow. A pig? A duck? A horse? A pencil sharpener? Blanche, jump in, I'm drowning." Obviously me saying it does no justice. The pencil sharpener bit really threw me though. Very, very funny. And there's a bit coming up where I really laughed out loud in connection with Sonia Klingenhofer. Rose is trying to tell this story because it's actually it's a comic strip, and she's going through each of the panels, and Blanche asks her dryly, "How many panels are there?" And it turns out there are 16, and Rose is on number 2. And Rose is told to skip to the end, even though she'll miss out the crow joke. And the moral of the story is that Sonia tells her mother, and her mother understands. It turns out she understands the crow joke, but I guess there is the encouragement there that Dorothy should talk with Sophia. And Rose is about to leave the kitchen and she thwacks the door into Sophia's face. And obviously she'd been listening in on the conversation. It's clear that she'd probably heard everything that they'd said about needing to tell Sophia. And she comes and sits down, and Dorothy asks her, "Why was your face pressed against the crack?" And without missing a beat, Rose turned around all excitedly and said, "That's what the crow said!" And Dorothy yells at her to get out, which was a bit harsh, but just those few seconds were just so perfectly executed. And it ends with Sophia saying that she's actually met some people down at the centre. They're going to Cancun, so she doesn't need to go to the Bahamas with Dorothy. Dorothy doesn't need to worry about this. Dorothy just doesn't feel like she can go, which I don't think is fair. Bearing in mind they live with 2 other people. So even if Dorothy went to the Bahamas, it's not like she'd be leaving Sophia on her own. So I do feel like Dorothy's overreacting. Maybe she just has a bigger heart than I do. I'm sure she does. But I do feel like she's thinking too much into this. And we also find out that Rose and Blanche didn't get the fashion show chairman position. Somebody else got it. And it seems like everything's wrapped up nicely. Dorothy's decided not to go. Rose and Blanche have nothing to bicker about anymore. And Sophia can give up the pretense that she's going to Cancun. Except somebody finally arrives to collect her. And she's ready to go. And actually, it's quite nice because she says at the end that she has her own life to live, and it's a really nice way to end things, and it helped to show that actually when she finally did go out there and did try and make friends and meet people, it worked, and she's going on a trip, and that's absolutely delightful. So it's a really solid episode. Personal highlights for me, I'd have to say the story of Sonia Klingenhofer. I definitely found that to be very entertaining. Dorothy guessing a pencil sharpener, which is very, very, very unexpected, to say the least. And Rose saying, "That's what the crow said." I found that to be absolutely delightful. And then, of course, Sophia going off on a trip and hopefully having a good time. I thought that was really lovely. And as I said, it helped to show that actually the advice is probably right. If you get out there and actually try and meet other people, you might actually have a good time and end up going on vacation and everything's going to be brilliant. So definitely a really solid episode. And as I said at the beginning, if you can relate to anybody, whether you're the Dorothy or the Sophia, I think there are some good bits of advice about how to maybe approach the situation and how maybe to not approach the situation as well. All things considered, I have to say that definitely an improvement on the previous 2 episodes, and Mom Makes 3 is definitely a good episode of The Golden Girls.